Hey guys, I wanted to focus on African Americans, how they either get advantages or disadvantages in high school. For example, like there's African American scholars, where they go in, it's a class you take, only minorities can take it, and they go in and they do their homework, they get help with tests and stuff. And if my friend, who happens to be white, wanted to take that class, they would not allow him because he's white. So for me, that wouldn't affect me because I could take it, but for my friend, it would affect my friend only because he's white, and if he wanted to learn, it would affect him. So I want to focus on both of those topics, and I'm just going to interview teachers and students, so yeah. So in the high school, do you think like minorities such as African Americans, they get advantages in like their classrooms or like anything else in the school? Like in your own opinion?
I honestly don't really think so, because even though there are like specific programs to like help them, I don't think that it gives them an advantage, because I feel like there's actually almost a disadvantage because you see like less like diversity among like the more advanced classes in the high school.
Yeah, okay. So Jalen, you're a AP honors student. You get good grades. In your higher classes, such as your advanced math and advanced Spanish class, are there diversity around? Like, do you see like African Americans, Hispanics, Latinos?
Honestly, I don't think that there's as much diversity as there should be, and yeah.
Do you think that African Americans get advantages, in the high school?
I wouldn't necessarily. I think they're like the programs like African American Scholars, Steps to Success, Medco. I feel like those programs are to our advantage, but at the same time we're at a disadvantage because it's harder for us to go to this school as a minority and go through certain things that other kids might not have to go through. So I wouldn't necessarily say that like we have a double standard or anything, but at the same time we do. So it's kind of like a so it depends on a situation, I think.
So Josh, in school, do you ever feel like minorities, such as, specifically African Americans, get advantages in school?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say, especially with the African American Scholars Program. And I don't, the issue that I have with the program is that I think because of affirmative action and stuff like that are trying to make sure that there's an equal number of African Americans and Latinos and disabled people and gays and females in the workplace or in schools as white straight males, that that any African American who graduates with the same grades from high school as a white person is going to have the same advantage, if not more of an advantage, into getting into high school than a white person. So the point of the African American Scholars Program is to further prepare and tutor and coach African Americans for high school. That doesn't really seem to be necessary, because it seems like, to me, all the people who are enrolled in that program are on the path to success anyways, and those who aren't are helped with other programs like OFC, and I feel like those students should be getting more support. Those students who might not even graduate at all. I think it's sort of like polishing those who are already going to graduate with an advantage and giving them more of an advantage, because there aren't that many. Unfortunately, there aren't that many African Americans who do graduate with as good grades as the best grades of a white person.
Yeah. Okay. So last question. You're a smart boy, Josh. You're in you're all honors classes. So in your honors classes, and how many minorities do you have in your honors classes?
Well, I have two minorities. One black student in my English class and a Latino student in my history class.
Wow. So in school, when we're talking about minorities, specifically African Americans, do you think they get, advantages in classes or disadvantages? Because I know a lot of kids say they get disadvantages, but there's also a good amount of kids who say they get advantages. And I just want to know what your thoughts on that.
I wouldn't say they either get disadvantages or advantages. There are programs that aid African American students and other minority students to succeed in school if they need it, but I wouldn't necessarily say they have a disadvantage in school.
Yeah, I agree with Armand. I think that in the high school is a different situation than in school overall. So I think that in the high school, teachers and administrators do a good job to even things like the achievement gap, like with African American scholars, and to make it more diverse across the board with METCO. And I think that's good to have a school that's kind of a proxy world for the greater world, because once you go to college, you're not going to be like sheltered with only kids from Brookline, and I think that it helps to have like outside opinions in classes and things like that. But I think that in things such as like the college process, there is some advantage. Like I just did a project for Spanish on affirmative action, and I learned that a white boy with a similar application to an African American boy, the minority will get 150 to 310 point boost on SATs. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, because diversity is obviously very important in schools that's part of the whole learning process. So I think that it's like important across the board to have advantages like that, because those things advantage the kids who aren't actually getting the advantages as well.
So, in your opinion, what is a double standard?
A double standard, in my opinion, is when someone is treated one way, and then someone else who is actually in that same position is treated a different way.
Okay. So in the high school, I'm assuming that there is a lot of double standards going around. And to me, I feel like specifically, I said this in one of my interviews, that when an African American, for example, says the N-word to another African American, they say, "Oh, what's up?" and they respond. But if I was to say that to an African American, they would call me racist.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think that is a double standard.
It is a double standard.
And to me, I think that is just a big thing, and I feel like in the high school that goes around a lot. And have you ever seen that or experienced it? Yeah,
I've heard it. I don't hear it as much as I used to, but I hear it more than I like to hear it, because I don't want to hear it at all.
Yeah.
For that very same reason, because that word has a lot of pain, anguish, and suffering behind it. And once it's being used like that in excess, and it's being used as a term of endearment, it slowly changes the meaning and what's behind it.
Yeah.
And it desensitizes people to that and the meaning. And the other thing that's concerning is that when people unknowingly hear it used generously and quite often, then they use it, and then all of a sudden there's a problem. And I've seen that happen before too, where a student did use that word and said, "What, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong." They use it, and then now you're dealing with a racist crisis, and you have to bring both students together, and you have to resolve it and have mediation. So it can be very disruptive.
Yep.
to say the least.
Okay. Last question. So I'm focusing on, minorities in the high school, but specifically I'm focusing on African Americans. Do you think, from a dean or teacher perspective, do you think that African Americans get an advantage or disadvantage in their classes?
I don't think African American students are at an advantage. I think in more cases they're at a disadvantage in some regards, and you have to be careful, and I have to be careful in how I phrase this, and so I'm going to clarify that. One of the things that I've learned from the work that I've done here and the work that I've done around the African American Latino Scholars Calculus Project is that one of the reasons African American students choose not to enroll in honors or advanced level courses in mathematics is because a lot of their friends are taking standard level math courses. And when you look at the dynamics of the school, African American students comprise approximately 12% of the student body here. So you have a situation wherein that, I'll give you an example, geometry honors, wherein that you would have maybe one African American student in a class of 25 students. And so in that class, you can have, for example, 10 white students, and you can have 14 Asian American students, and then one African American student. So all of a sudden, that African American student represents all of Black America, whether it's intentional or not. And sometimes that comes out. So if you are white and you're surrounded in this example by nine students who look like you, who may share your same culture, may live in your neighborhood, then that's a pretty comfortable environment. If you're Asian American, that's a pretty comfortable environment. If you're African American, it may or may not be a comfortable environment. For some African Americans, it may not matter. So that's another distinction that needs to be clarified. I'm not speaking for all African Americans, but I'm saying for some, and I'm saying this through interviewing African American students, it is a big deal. So if we can create an environment wherein that there's parity and everyone is comfortable from a social aspect of being in a room with some people who look like them, who may share their same culture or same language, then it levels the playing field more for everyone. So that's why I say in some ways they may be at a disadvantage, but I don't ever see it in a way wherein the African American students are advantaged. Simply because the other piece of this is that there are a lot of stereotypes and assumptions that go with being African American, that goes with being white, that goes with being Asian American too. And for African Americans, you have all of the data out there, and you have the achievement gap that always suggests that African American students cannot achieve at high levels, and they're not smart enough. That creates a certain level of pressure. Whereas with Asian American students, the assumption is if you're Asian American, that you're automatically good at math. Well, I've been teaching math for 19 years, and I've taught some Asian American students who are not good at math. So what does that do to students who are Asian American? It creates a certain level of pressure for them too, because when you walk into a math class, you're expected to get all A's. So when you don't get all A's, that's pressure. So through those stereotypes and assumptions, a negative stereotype and assumption can create pressure and stress, and also positive stereotypes and assumptions can create stress. So every student, depending on who you are, your ethnicity, religion, everyone who comes into a classroom, they're carrying some type of baggage in the form of a stereotype or assumption.
In schools, you think when we talk about minorities, specifically African Americans, you think they get either disadvantage or advantage? And like
Disadvantage. Sure.
Why?
Because, well, obviously we're in the same race class and we hear experiences firsthand from various sources of people either being discriminated against by teachers and on average, like, a lot of African American families have a lower income than, say, like a white family does. On average, I think it's like $95,000 on average, and they can't like afford resources that, like, say my family could afford, like a tutor or extra help outside of school or SAT prep and just like the extra stuff outside of school as well as in school too, just being discriminated against, like I said, by teachers. And yeah, statistically there's also like a disadvantage because of like the achievement gap between African American or black students versus like white students or non-minorities, and so yeah, there's definitely a disadvantage there. But I think the school tries to make up for it with a lot of programs available to minorities that aren't necessarily available to white people or white students, like Metco and African American Scholars, which are all great programs, but I'm not sure that they're like making up for the achievement gap in the right ways.
In your classes, do you see diversity? Do you see lots of African Americans, Latinos, Asians, and whites?
Well, primarily I take honors classes. I don't take any APs, and I take one standard class. And in my standard class, there's actually a cohort in it. It's a math class, so there's a lot of diversity in there. I think it's very evenly distributed. But in my other classes that are like honors, I don't see as much diversity. Like in our race class, there's only 2 minorities. In our chem class, there's only like 0, really. I don't think there is any. That's a mixed class actually, though. So that's not. I take honors, but it's not necessarily an honors class. But yeah, I see a lot more diversity in classes that are at a standard level more than an advanced level. And Dr. Mim spoke about that, but yeah.
So Nina, in school, there's when we talk about minorities, specifically African Americans, the topic whether or not they get advantages or disadvantages comes up a lot. I know I've interviewed people, and some kids say they get advantages, and some kids say they get a disadvantage. And I just want to get your opinion on whether or not they get advantage or disadvantage.
Well, I think that like a lot of talk goes around about that because a lot of people, especially because recently everyone found out about getting into junior mentors and getting into like the different programs that the school has and like SWS and stuff like that. A lot of that comes up because I don't know, a lot of times people feel that minorities will like have priority over like a white person just because of the color of their skin, even though like the white person may be just as qualified to get into the class. And I do agree that like there's something really unjust about that. But at the same time, like there's 2 sides to the argument, but I think that the way the school does that, it can be kind of flawed. I think it can just be unfair, like that like I don't have the advantage to like for a teacher to put me on the waiting list to be a junior mentor, and an African American does, even though like I may be more qualified than them, or we may be in the same situation. I don't know. I think there's something wrong about that.
So in school, do you think when we talk about minorities, specifically African Americans, the topic of whether or not they get an advantage in school comes up a lot, or a disadvantage in school? Some say they get a disadvantage because they don't have enough money. Some say they get an advantage in school because they're African American, so they have affirmative action. I just want to know what your opinions are on affirmative action, or even like whether or not African Americans get advantage or disadvantage in school.
I think that African Americans do get advantages in some ways. For example, affirmative action. I couldn't apply for affirmative action, and someone who is African American could, but I think it does make sense because there are less African Americans and they want to be fair to everybody. But at the same time, I feel like it is a little bit unequal.
Well, I absolutely do think that African Americans get a huge advantage in school. First of all, affirmative action is a big thing. I think it has its time and it has its place, but I think this might be a little bold, I think it may be overused. Especially, for example, when applying for a job, I think if it's a white person against a black person, if you have the same qualifications, I don't think that the black person should get it because they're black. I think they should dig deeper and see who's really the best. Maybe for something like an essay contest, if you were to write an essay, it's an essay. You worked hard. You deserve to win. I don't think a person should win just because they're black. That's you could work. I think whoever works harder should win. I don't think they should get to work less hard because they're black. I think it's bullcrap. I think for something like SWS, I think it absolutely makes sense because there aren't as many black people in SWS, and they do want to make it diverse. And I think that giving them an advantage is totally appropriate in that sense. Disadvantages? I wouldn't say any at BHS. I think the only time and place you'd see a disadvantage for a black person is maybe somewhere down south, where some of the teachers were, I don't know, maybe are racist. They might unfairly grade them, but I don't think that's the case here, ever. No.
Hey guys, so I hope you enjoyed my film that I made. It took a while. Thanks to my friend Josh Mitnick for lending me his camera. If he didn't lend me his camera, I don't think I could have interviewed people. So yeah, that, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Every person I interviewed was, they all had different opinions, and every thought they gave me I thought about, and I want to thank every person who helped me out, and I especially want to thank Dean Mims. He really changed my perspective on the entire, thought through whether or not African Americans get advantages in school. And just like what he said was just so inspiring, and it just touched me, and I just really want to thank him. So thank you, Dr. Mims. Second, I do want to change my opinion. I thought African Americans got an advantage in school. No, I think they get a disadvantage, and I don't think they get a disadvantage or an advantage. I think, they're all, just normal kids who are just going to Brookline High School, and they're just attending school. So, I started off thinking that they got advantages, but now I'm thinking that they don't, and they don't get a disadvantage. They just go to school. And this was because Dr. Mims, with what he said, and also, what everybody said. They all, changed my perspective on everything, and I really enjoyed it. So I had a lot of fun filming this. Thanks, Race and Identity 2013. It was a blast. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, everybody else who was in my class. You guys, really helped, and I really appreciate it. So thanks. I'll catch you guys later.